guys, this is your first lesson of the week. You are on lesson 7-10, so make sure you get out your SAB and a pencil, and we're going to get started. Today's lesson is about comparing decimals to hundredths, which we did a little bit of yesterday. Before I actually get started on the video though, I do want to remind you of one thing that we talked about last week, and we are doing a lot of talking about money when we talk about decimal points because it's a really great place to start since you're used to it. And so I want to remind you that if you had a dollar amount, like let's say that you had $1.35 or something like that. If you were to think about one way that somebody could give you back change, they could have given you back 3 dimes, and then they also could give you back 5 pennies. But I want to remind you of what that really means. 3 dimes means that you have 3/10ths of a dollar. If you had 10 full tenths of a dollar, that would equal 1 whole dollar amount. And then hundredths is the same thing, but we're talking about pennies. How many pennies does it take to make 1 whole dollar? It makes 100 pennies, which is why we call this your hundredths place. And just as one other reminder, another thing that we had talked about is in our number system. Let me just draw that for you real quick. In our number system, everything is sort of based around the ones place. So I'm going to put a 5 here in the ones place. And then I can make a number 10 times bigger by going to the left. Let's make that 55. And then I could make that number 10 times bigger again to make that 555. And so we know that this one's called the ones place. We know that this one's called the tens place. And we know that this one's called the hundreds place. You've known that for a long time. Well, you'll notice that the ones place is kind of in the very middle of our number system, and then everything is branching to the right or to the left. So I just told you that this line right here is kind of like having 3 dimes, and that there are 10 dimes to equal $1. And because of that, that means that this line right here, we call these our tenths. And then this line right here, we call our hundredths. But I want you to notice something in the label. From our ones place, we branch to the left and we get tens, and to the right we get tenths. To the left we get hundreds, and to the right we get hundredths. So no matter what you're doing, they're equal parts away from your whole number, and so we would have tenths and hundredths there. So that might help you out a little bit today as we kind of just breeze through this lesson. There's a lot of questions, and I'm not going to answer them all for you, so one of your options today will be to finish up your SAB work on your own, but let's go ahead and jump into this first one. So it says, write decimal numbers. In the situations below, each person is traveling the same distance. They want you to write a decimal number to represent the distance each person has traveled. Okay, so Aki has traveled 3/10ths of the distance, and Stephen has traveled 5/10ths of the distance. So really all they want us to do here is to write down, 0.3 and 0.5 to show that we have a 3 in the tenths place. So I'm going to show you that real quick off to the side. And this would be that I have nothing in the ones place, and then I have a 3 in the tenths place. So the way we would write that is 0.3 for Aki, and then 0.5 for Stephen. Now, something to talk about, a lot of times in math, I will kind of go fast, and that's totally bad on my part. But you don't technically need this 0 here, but I'm going to tell you why it's good practice. It's always a good idea to put a 0 here, and the reason it's a good idea is it's really just showing you that there's nothing there. There's nothing in the ones place, and this is simply just a 3 in the tenths place. So yes, it's good practice, and yes, today I would like you to try that out, okay? So let's look at Jose and Lakeisha. Jose has traveled 25 hundredths of the distance, and Lakeisha has traveled 18 hundredths. So here's what that means. When you see a number like 25, and then it gives you the label like hundredths, the way that I think about it is it's telling me that my number is supposed to end in the hundredths place. Okay, so because of that, I know that this 25 will be able to fit right in there, no problem. But let's just say for a random example, let's say that it said Jose had only traveled 5 hundredths of the distance. Again, that label of hundredths tells me that my number is supposed to end in this hundredths place, and then Jose would have had just a 5 there, and we would have had to add a 0 here. That's one of the things we're going to talk about today, is this sort of place value holder 0. But I'm getting a little ahead of myself, as Mrs. Glassy is known to do. So Jose is going to be 0.25, and Lakeisha will be 0.18. Okay, next we have Yasir, and it says he's traveled 7/10 of the distance, and that Danielle has traveled 59/100. So 7/10, that tells me that this number needs to end in the tenths place. And then here for Danielle, it says 59/100, so I know that this number should end in the hundredths place. So let's just go ahead and do that work. That's a 0.7 there for Yasir, and then a 0.59 for Danielle. So then for number 4, Leah has traveled 8/100 of the distance, and Kwang Sun has traveled 6/10 of the distance. Ooh, this is kind of what I was just talking about. So here, would you see where it says Leah traveled 8/100? So that tells me that Leah's number needs to end in the hundredths place. And then Kwang Sun has traveled 6/10, so I need my answer to end in the tenths place. So I'm going to put it as an 8 there for Leah, and then a 6 there for Kwang Sun, and then as a reminder, you need those zeros there in front. But I need to basically show myself here, there's nothing in the tenths place. Leah didn't have any number of tenths, she only had a number of hundredths. So in order to show me that, we're basically going to put a 0 there to hold the place for us. Okay? So now we want to do some comparing, and the one thing that I want to help you remember is that you need to compare just like you would a regular number. If we look at something like 42 compared to 41, right? Well, we need to look at the tens place first before we look at the ones place. Even though a 2 is greater than 1, 42 is going to be greater than 41, which is why my arrow would go this way, right? Or my jaw. But on what problem like number 5, we have to be careful because these are technically both a 4, but you have to look at their place value. So this 4 is in the hundredths place, and this 4 is in the tenths place. Well, if you're thinking of money, would you rather have 40 cents or would you rather have 4 cents? Well, this 40 cents is what represents this 0.4, and so our alligator mouth will go to the left. So we would read that as 4/10 is greater than 4/100. So that's what you got to think about. Now, this next one is also trying to trick you a little bit here. This 3 and this 3 are both in the tenths place. Remember, the first number after your decimal point is always called the tenths place, just like the second number after your decimal point is always called the hundredths place. So because of that, my 3 and my 3 are both 30 or 3/10, so that means that they are equal. Let's do another one. If we were to look at this one just by its number, 24 is definitely greater than 7. But the reason we have to be careful is because what I'm really doing is I'm comparing 7/10 to 2/10. So even though this number looks like 24, it's technically only 24 cents, whereas this is technically 70 cents. So that means that our answer is going to be, the greater number will be on the left. Okay, for number 8, again, you're comparing tenths, and 1 is going to be less than 8, so we'll move our comparison symbol to the right. Okay, number 9 gives us another example of that. 61 definitely seems larger than 8. However, it's the place value that we are trying to compare here. Let me shade that for us. So this 6 in the tenths place is what we're comparing to this 8 in the tenths place. And then it's pretty clear to see that 8 is larger than 6. Okay. All right, let's do a couple. I'm going to finish out this row, and then these 3 rows will be ones that you can do to show your work later on, okay? So let's do number 10 first, though. I've got a 54 here, and I've got a 2, or a 20. And here, if I'm looking at just my tenths place, 5 is going to be larger than 2. So I'll go to the left. Here we've got 2 2 numbers in our tenths and hundredths place. So we've got 11 hundredths and 15 hundredths. So 15 is going to be larger. And then number 12 is definitely trying to trick you a little bit. I see here a 2 in the tenths place. And then actually in this number on the left, I see a 0 in the tenths place. So because of that, I know 2/10 is greater than no tenths at all. Okay? So again, remember 13 through 24 is definitely ones you can try on your own. But let's go ahead and move on to these word problems. Let's try to walk ourselves through these ones real quick. So this is just simply word problems with decimal numbers. And then it's going to tell you about the Cruz family. So the Cruz family is enjoying a 10-day vacation. So far they have been vacationing for 1 week. So it says, what decimal number represents the part of their vacation that is past? Well, they've been vacationing for 1 week, which is going to be 7 days. And how many days is their vacation altogether? It's going to be 10 days. So to write that as a fraction, we would see that as 7/10. And a fraction is going to help us also write our decimal point. So this basically reads as 7/10. And because I now know that this place value in a decimal number means the tenths place, I can write that down as a 7 right there. So this says, what decimal number represents the part of their vacation that is past? They have used up 0.7 tenths of their vacation so far. And then it says, what decimal number represents the part of their vacation that remains? Well, they want to have 1 full vacation. So how far away are they away from making 1 full vacation? That's going to be 3 more tenths. And the way we would write that as a decimal point is 3 in the tenths place. So 0.3. And then for number 27 and 28, this one's about Jeremy. It says he spent 3 quarters and 1 nickel at the school store. So it wants to know, what decimal part of $1 did he spend? Well, you're going to have to add up your 3 quarters and your nickel. Well, 3 quarters is 75 cents, and a nickel is 5 cents. Remember, the way that that's written would be a 5 in the hundredths place, because a nickel is worth 5 pennies. And if we were to add those two together, that's going to be 80 cents altogether. So that means he's used up 8 tenths of $1. You could either write that as 80, because when I added 75 and 5, I got 80. You also could just simply write that as 0.8. Those are actually going to mean the same thing, something we will talk about in another lesson. And this says, what decimal part of $1 did he not spend? So if he has $1 total, we want to know basically the difference between those two. That means that he has not spent 20 tenths of his, or 20 hundredths, I guess, or 2 tenths of his dollar yet. Oops, that should not be an 8. That should be a 2. Okay? And then to wrap this one up, these are mostly, I'm going to have you guys do them on your own, but I'm going to maybe help you with 1 problem from this set and 1 problem for this set. So this is, write the word name of each number. So they want you to write it in words, and I'm going to do number 32 for you. So basically the way that you do this is you want to look at your 7 and your 3, and your 3 is what's going to tell you your name. So that 3 ends in the hundredths place. So because of that, I would write this down as 73, because that's the whole number. And then what place value does it end in? We said that ended in the hundredths place. So we would write that down as 73 hundredths. So you're going to try the rest of those 3 out on your own. And then the next one says, write a decimal number for each word name. So you're going to try to read these. And I'm going to do number 38 for you, because that's probably the hardest one. So this says 6 hundredths. So you do need to remember that means it needs to end in the hundredths place. That says to have a 6 in the hundredths place. And then we just need some zeros to represent that there's nothing there. So we'll call that 0.06. So here is my preference for today. My preference for today is actually that you just simply try to finish out these SAB pages. If that doesn't take you very long and you feel like you need a little bit more time, there are definitely some good IXL lessons, and I always love a homework and remembering option, so you can try that one out as well. Just make sure you guys try to work for at least 10 or 15 more minutes to solidify this skill, okay? I will see you tomorrow. Log into Zoom if you need any help, but good luck.